Your competitors hate you.
Check your ego. Like, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. What are you going to do with this one life that you have? My answer then was that I wanted to be a change maker. One of our core values with our firms is that people are the true drivers of value. I don't ever want to be across the table from you. I want to be shoulder to shoulder. Like, let's go through this together.
So when it's like a founder who's like built a company, he's literally put it together with like blood, sweat, tears, and duct tape.
You having the personality of being a successful founder is that you see risk as opportunity. It's exciting what the next chapter holds. Your employees see risk as risk. The only thing in the back of their heads when you share this with them is like, what about my job?
Hey, Mya, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, nice to see you.
I guess to kind of get this started, let's give the audience a little bit of context of who you are and what you do.
Yeah. No, I'm Mya Stone, the founder and managing partner of Stone Capital Partners. We're a people-focused M&A firm, do both buy and sell-side advisory.
So you probably get the same thing that I got when I started my company. You're an M&A, you're young, okay? You're also a woman, which is unique, right?
Yep.
When I started my company, same thing. I'm 36. I literally looked like I was 12 years old, right? So a lot of respect to you, honestly, for just jumping in that space and doing a great job and kind of turning that into a competitive differentiator, I really think. You have a really cool history. I want to talk about that a little bit. So kind of give me your background, like schooling, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town called Greenville in West Michigan, kind of country town. My grandparents moved out there from Grand Rapids essentially to retire, bought a super cute lake place, and, not knowing that they would get a bonus child. Both of my parents passed away when I was a young kid. They passed away when I was 2. So grandma and grandpa were always mom and dad for me. Grew up out there with them. I'm only child, just myself. So from there, went to, Greenville High School, knew I wanted to be an attorney, or at least I did at the time. A teacher in 3rd grade told me that I'd make a great lawyer someday, not because they meant it, but I was, kind of an argumentative kid. But I thought, great, like I've decided what I'm going to be when I grow up, like let's go from here. So went to Michigan State for undergrad, studied political science and economics, went pretty much straight from undergrad to grad school. I was fortunate to be able to go to Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School, did a dual JD MBA. My husband followed me out to Cambridge and talk about a little bit of a culture shock. Big difference from, Cambridge to Lansing to Grand Rapids to Greenville. But went to school, finished school, all enough just to figure out that I didn't actually want to be an attorney, which sucks. The tuition at Harvard is
I was going to say, most people, they're like
insane.
in 3rd grade, don't really know what they want to be. Like,
yeah. And, just kind of a tough one I've always been kind of a driven, hard driver type person of like, once I get my mind on something, like you're not going to convince me otherwise. And unfortunately, sometimes even when it's not a good idea.
So you graduated high school like super young, right?
I think you said, I graduated when I had just turned 16.
16.
My birthday's in May.
Okay.
That I think, maybe a couple days after.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely a unique one to be 16.
Yeah, what was that like going like 16 years old in college? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of like, I had kind of in a way become a compulsive liar about my age for like a good decade. Like it's maybe the last 5 years or so that I've even been, open about how old I am. I'm 31, just turned 31. It was my birthday last Friday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But it's, one of like, I don't know. It's really not that much of a difference, right? Like it's only 2 years, but I guess, in that 2 years, it's a pretty big gap. So, it's an interesting one of, kind of that catch up, I guess. But
so you're 16, you go to Cambridge, you go to Harvard, you go to MSU, and then you're like, I don't like any of this. Basically, like, I just don't want to be a lawyer. Like, what made you realize you didn't want to be a lawyer?
Yeah, so went all the way through law school, and the way that it works of like once you finish law school, you have to go take the bar before you can even practice at all. That passed the bar in Massachusetts, and Had taken basically a first year associate role at Kirkland Ellis, which is like a big law firm. And had kind of realized that the partner that I had worked under had very recently become partner despite, being there for a number of years. And no offense to this guy, but I think he had been divorced maybe 3 or 4 times, like no life in the guy's eyes, and he had just become partner. That I can only imagine,
Amazing.
the sacrifices that he
Yeah.
made, personally to get there professionally. And kind of what was in my mind is like, well, what the heck does guy number 2 look like? Like, certainly you were not the only one pining for this spot. I'm sure in this guy's head, he thought that it was all well and worth it. But what about the guy who didn't make it? And so kind of doing that math in my head of, well, what am I willing to sacrifice for this? What are my actual goals? Because I've been, kind of blinders on up to this point. And just not worth it to me. There's no way that I'm going to make that kind of sacrifice for this. So took, kind of a little bit of a 180, from 3rd grade till then. I thought that I knew what the mission was. And like you do when you don't know what you want to do, you decide to join a venture capital firm and do some startups. And most of those startups didn't go anywhere. There's the term of like fail fast. And the fastest that I failed was a good 48 hours of submitting my idea to the board. And they're like, not a chance. And I was like, all right, well, on to the next one. But a few classmates and I founded one that actually did go somewhere. And the concept of that, it was called Adina Urban Resort. My classmates, who I think had very different upbringings than I did, had the thought of, well, when I go on vacation and I go to an all-inclusive, it's always at a beach somewhere. But I don't want to go to the beach to vacation. I want a vacation in the city, but I like the all-inclusive, style and all the amenities that come with that. Is there a way that we could recreate an all-inclusive resort, but in the city? That city being Boston, where we were. So kind of a multifaceted startup. One part of that was the real estate development side, similar to Airbnb, doing kind of a decentralized lodging. And then the other side of that would have been kind of tech platform, relationship making. And this is before things like Resi and Airbnb even were, what they are today, that kind of a bespoke idea. So really the life cycle that a client would have came into is that they would, book through us like you would any other hotel. But once you're actually in the city and here, somebody would pick you up from the airport, bring you to the storefront that we had on Boylston so that you had a place to leave your bags. Somebody would come and clean your room every day, and that you could book restaurants and experiences directly through our app. And some of the idea concept was we never want you to have to take your credit card out of your wallet. So what can we do to elevate that experience? And went pretty well. We ended up exiting it about two years later. Ended up doing a sale to one of those larger companies, not Airbnb, but Airbnb-esque. And just an interesting experience. I mean, knowing what I know now, we got drastically underpaid for what the company was probably
you're like a couple
valued.
years out of college already exiting.
Yeah.
It's like pretty sick. Like that's a sick experience. Right?
Yeah, and it was cool to like go to California.
Yeah, you guys got totally
and,
taken advantage of probably.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were taken for an absolute ride, but like we didn't, care. And some of it was just the experience of like, oh my gosh, it worked. And, I and the other co-founders, we didn't take a salary for that 2 years. Like truly nothing.
Yeah.
My husband thought I was crazy that prior to that, I worked at Starbucks while I was in grad school. And I remember having a real conversation with my husband of like, are you really not going to work at Starbucks anymore? Because like we need income and we need it now. He's like, no, I think that this is going to work out. And it's like, well, what if it doesn't? I was like, it can't, because we don't have any money. So thankfully that one, worked out well for us. But I think one of the interesting points of that experience was, once you have a little bit more proof of concept, Harvard helps you form an advisory board, folks from the industry. And that advisory board met one-on-one with all of us to help us kind of dedicate where in the business should we be focused on. And when they sat down with me, I kind of had it in my head of like, well, I think I have an idea of what they're going to ask me to do. And I feel very silly that I thought this, but I was like, surely they want me to be the CEO. I have the people experience and whatnot. And that's not at all how the conversation went, obviously. But what was interesting is, we're going through this and they're saying, Mya, based on what we know about you, getting to work with you, we think that HR and people leadership would be the right place for you. Stone face, like not at all happy with this news. And I've gotten better as time has gone on, but I am one of those unfortunate people that just emotions on my face and I just can't hide it. And they're like, what's wrong? What's going on? And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And my quote back to them was, I didn't go to Harvard to become the HR person. And I appreciate the grace that they gave me because they definitely could have said it in a less polite tone. But basically their feedback was like, check your ego. Like, you don't have any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, we don't care if we went to Harvard. Like,
Yeah,
we care, but like, we
doesn't
don't
matter.
care. Yeah,
No.
like,
And like, that's not the reason for this.
Yeah.
And their feedback to me was, hey, respectfully, get your head wrapped around this. And the reality of people is that they are an asset. And if you know how to leverage the asset that's people, we think you're going to go far with this. We just need you to trust us. It's like, all right, I guess I'll trust you. And leaned into it, and it was kind of the start of a career that I otherwise would have never imagined. Yeah. And even now, still, I mean, one of our core values with our firms is that people are the true drivers of value. So from that point forward, kind of a big philosophy change for me.
That's great. So when did you start Stone?
I started Stone in July of last year, so 2025.
So what inspired that? Like, because. And what were you, I guess, doing prior?
Yeah. So if you fast forward the tape, at some point, my husband and I moved back to Michigan. I was working at a consulting firm, and I had met two investment bankers who had recently bought a deal that came through, just generally looking to be sold at the M&A firm that they worked for. And I give them a ton of credit of they thought, who better than us? Two guys in our mid-20s in suits with a IB and PE background, like, sure, we'll buy it. That makes sense. So they ended up buying it. They came to the consulting firm that I was at and really kind of like pitched me even as a consultant to them of what their plans were. And I was hooked of like, let's go do this thing. And so we grew that from 6 locations to 47 locations over 5 years, all through acquisition. And they were a body shop franchise. One of the interesting things about that setup is that franchise disclosures are public knowledge, that we had a built-in buyer that could not have made acquisitions more easy for us, of clear target, clear aging target as well, that, frankly, I think it gave me a little bit of false confidence of how easy I thought transactions would be in the future, because a little bit of shooting fish in the barrel. So anyway, we go through all of that. Our original goal was to get to 50, to kind of build out the full platform. And I think the real answer that I can give you is that, frankly, we ran out of money at 47 for a variety of reasons. Little bit on business model. Body shops could not be more of a CapEx intensive business. All the equipment's expensive. It was nice to have that built-in buyer, but those buyers were aging out and probably mentally aged out about 20 years ago. And so a lot of their shops weren't in great shape. And it's also super heavy environmental compliance. Paint is kind of a nasty substance. So, you can't just like dump this stuff down the drain.
But that's
you shouldn't. Yeah. Not ideal. So that just the business model operating was expensive. And then we had gotten into a lawsuit with the franchisor company. And essentially both of us lost, but it had ended up with us disenfranchising from them. And it was a super quick turnaround of needing to rebrand everything in all of our locations. Now we're in multiple states, multiple areas, that it was really kind of this like, okay, divide and conquer. You're going to parachute in and take care of these shops. You do these ones. And I have to believe that the person at FedEx probably still talks about this crazy lady of, how many banners can I get and how many stickers and how fast can you get it? Because it was like almost just this canvas of like, we need to cover all of the original branding.
Overnight, basically.
Yeah. And one of the results of the lawsuit was you only have X amount of time. And, a quote from the other side was, we're going to be paying you a visit. And if we see so much as even a branded pen in your location, we'll be back in this courtroom.
Wow.
So we knew that the pressure was going to be on us. And I mean, it's one of like, you really don't think about, especially because we weren't the original owners, of like all this random stuff of like, oh yeah, that random sign does have the logo on it. Like how am I going to replace that? And it needed to not be visible at all. That it wasn't enough to cover it just a little bit. It needed to be a complete cover. And so that, again, super capital intensive, time intensive, both the lawsuit and the rebrand. And it's not like they didn't not do nothing. A lot of what the franchise fees would go to would be toward marketing. And like we started from truly zero of like even down to like, oh, the franchisee company owns our phone numbers kind of thing of like nobody can even call the shops because we didn't actually own that.
Wow.
Yeah, so total, redo. And then to make matters worse, we had some cap table complications that one of the sponsors that we had some pretty serious life changes and had gotten really sick and unfortunately ended up passing away. That was like, well, let's take a look at the landscape here. We spent a ton of money on this thing that we probably shouldn't have spent money on. The money that we had invested, we had just gotten back, and we had one individual who was our independent sponsor who, is no more, and we're trying to figure out his estate. Like, it might just be time for us to get out of this. I don't know that I'm interested in owning 100 body shops someday. That, let's be proud of what we built and get out of here and do our thing. So we ended up selling it to a private equity firm, made an exit there. And it was a little bit of this, kind of lost in the middle of, well, what are we going to do next? And it's like, well, I don't know that we need to decide that today. The two, co-founders went back to the M&A firm that they worked at, and it was like, why don't you try to come with us? So I followed them there, and I think one of the interesting parts of that relationship is that all of their advisors are contractors. And so really I did start my business about 3 years ago. But on, operating as truly my own shingle has been about a year. So had learned a lot there, had really gotten kind of an inside look that I don't think that I had gotten from, my time with the body shops was very much like the tactical side of deals of like, how are we going to get it done? How are we going to go to the finish line? And then my time at the professional firm was kind of everything previous to that. So a lot of like the deal origination, trying to get somebody to commit to something that is honestly a really big ask. Asking somebody to sell their business is kind of like asking them to sell their child. That, they're not just like lining up at the door ready to work with you.
Mm.
Just all of the details that go into that. It's a very competitive landscape. It's highly transactional work of like on some level, and I'm pretty casual with prospects and clients about it of like, frankly, we just don't do brain surgery around here. That every transaction, regardless if it's 1 million or 100 million, generally follows the same 10 steps. And a lot of M&A firms really tout of like how good they are at the process. Well, the process is the same kind of no matter where you go, that it's really that relationship piece. So enjoyed my time there. I learned a ton, but it was a little bit of this impasse of, the way that I work with clients is more on that consultatory level. Traditional M&A firms, if you come to them and say, I do want to sell, but I'm not ready to, they say, well, I'm sorry, come back to me when you're ready. Or if you're on the buy side of things, you need to have such clear criteria of what you're looking for, what size, how are you funding it, that they needed to check all of, these several boxes to be considered. And if you're missing even one of those boxes, it's sorry, I can't work with you. And so really the way that I was working with clients is like, well, how do we open that up a little bit with a consulting background? If the end that we're trying to get to is the transaction, why would we not work together to get you there and then represent you when the time is right? And one of the things that I had found for the work for myself was how well I was actually able to speak to the business, because I had kind of lived in the business with the client that we were working with, rather than kind of the typical timeline is that you'd come in, we might do evaluation for you, deliver that, kind of get to know your business as we're doing diligence. But that's very much building the plane and flying it too, of then trying to tell the buyer what we had just learned from you. versus, well, I know their story. I know what goes on in the day to day. Let me tell you about my time there. That it really is almost looking at it from a second
Yeah, you know
founder's
what they're going through
lens.
too. Like,
Right.
yeah, like you just know the pain. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and on that pain too, I think one of the other things that I had realized was really just how emotional this all is. And even, the body shop company, I think about who the three of us were when we started. We're all somewhat newly married, mid 20s. None of us had kids yet. To even just 5 years later, my husband and I had our son. Both of my other co-founders both had 2 children each. And there's something like sentimental that I had felt at the end of that when we did sell it, of like, I'll never be kind of those dumb kids in my 20s again. And that part of me sold with the business, that it's a real grief of self. Like there's a loss there. And I can only imagine the scale that happens at when you've owned something for 10 years, 20 years. You didn't just watch your kids grow up here, but your grandkids and everywhere in between. That to be able to kind of speak that back to the clients that we work with is a relationship that if you haven't lived it, you really can't speak to it.
That's great. So the clients you have, I guess, what's kind of the market that you guys are going after? Like, who's your target? Like, who's the perfect fit for somebody that you can help?
Yes.
Psychograph, mindset, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so generally it's businesses from a revenue standpoint that are doing somewhere from 1 to 100 million. Anything below that, anything above that, we're frankly not the right partner most of the time, but always happy to connect to partners who are. And then it's almost always going to still be founder owned and operated. That we seem to thrive with kind of that original, or maybe it's G2. But being able to speak to the history, kind of the thing that they've created and the legacy transfer that they're hoping for rather than the transaction.
Do you guys ever just walk into like a complete mess? Like,
Oh yeah, I mean,
like almost all the time.
day.
Like talk
Yeah.
about it. Like we don't have to use any names. But like I can
Yeah.
imagine, like from my own experience, I'm sure like a lot of our stuff we've cleaned up a lot, but like in general, I just know how businesses operate. And a lot of times when it's like a founder who's like built a company, he's literally put it together with like blood, sweat, tears, and duct tape, and it just works.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like not ready to sell at all. And like if they got looked at, they're gonna get laughed at. So like, what are some of like the common like messes that you see that you guys kind of have to clean up?
Yeah. And it's one of like I'm careful on like the messes of like from my time in consulting. The reality is of like I'm a firefighter. I know most of the time, and I say this with love for my clients, of like, you didn't call me because everything was going well. Like you called me because there was an issue. And sometimes I think even just getting over the shame of like, how did my business get here? And like it's fine. Like honestly, nothing surprises me at this point, that it's like, let's just work through it. But
because you guys have to really get. I mean, it's like
we're in there. We're rolling up our
I'm not saying
sleeves.
invasive, but like it's invasive. It's like
yeah.
they really
No,
have to
it's
trust you. Like
it's a full look under the hood, and I think there's the obvious issues of your finances not being in order, or the amount of business owners that are using their business like their own personal piggy bank. Like that's all pretty common stuff. Like that's fixable stuff. I think maybe the more surprising side is the amount of clients that we end up, getting to know their family, or I joke of like, well, who's the founder behind the founder? And most of the time it's the wife in the industries that we're working with, of like, well, what's her lived experience and her story? And I think when you start to cross that line of like, it's, work is highly personal, business is highly personal, but not always professional, that you really get some of those like more interesting stories of, talking to the owner, of making some recommendations of what he needed to see improved. But, ultimately the wife is the purse, and like, she's just not interested in, making truly what would be investments to the business. And
so
just
she's
kind
the
of
one
those,
actually controlling. Yeah, I got you.
yeah. But not a business person. And I don't say that to be shaming, but when you're trying to explain to somebody who doesn't understand what the investment's actually going to yield back for us, it's like, well, you're just asking me to spend money, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, we're doing great. We're good.
Yeah. And I think to, not bring her down, but to try to explain. And sometimes in those scenarios, there really is no explaining. That sometimes you get into this interesting one of like, the owner is in our camp. Technically, our agreement is with the owner, but I'm not going against the wife. I know at the end of the day, like, she's the ultimate boss. And so trying to, navigate with my business owner client of like, Mr. So and so, I don't think it would be a good idea to go behind your wife's back to fund this. Like, I don't know that that's going to work out for me or you. Let's try to find a compromise. So you get, some of those situations that you would just never, expect to find yourself in. I think the other one too is how the employees take it. So there's kind of two schools of thought of, do you tell your employees that you're thinking about selling, or do you wait until close? And unfortunately, both of them suck. Like, somehow,
yeah, I've always wondered that. Like, how do you navigate? Because I feel like you could like disenfranchise people if you tell them too early, right? Or just get like, there's like, not, I don't want to work for you anymore, But then if you don't tell them, it's like, yo, I've had these people for 10 years. I'm just not going to tell them.
Yeah,
they just both suck. Like,
yeah, it's kind of a lose-lose situation, and sometimes it feels like whatever it was that you did, you just should have done the opposite. And I think the reality is like it's just a hard conversation, and some of what we try to coach our clients on is really looking through the lens of your employees and not looking at it through the lens of a founder. Had a really interesting conversation with somebody once on this same topic of, well, the new owners are going to bring more money and better benefits. And, I've gotten this about as far as I can that, like, it's going to be a good thing for my employees. That why would they not be excited about this? And trying to explain to him of, well, I think you having the personality of being a successful founder is that you see risk as opportunity. It's exciting what the next chapter holds. Your employees see risk as risk. That the only thing in the back of their heads when you share this with them is like, what about my job? And it's not just my job. It's I support my family. I have kids in school. I have tuition payments. I have a wife at home that doesn't work. That all of that is shaken. And that's really hard to be on the same level of, if we're just thinking about it, of like, well, it's just your job. You'll go get another one if for some reason this one doesn't work out. It just doesn't. We're not talking the same language. But on the opposite end, when you do wait, it feels like this ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
That
right.
It's like, how could you keep this secret from me of like, you made this big decision without me? And so really what we advise on and what we try to coach clients on is that we kind of have to look at it on a case by case basis. I find with more of those, kind of tactical, get it done employees, that it's helpful to let them know, maybe a couple of months in advance of like, we're already kind of working on a deal. No deal is done until it's actually done. But we feel a level of assurity of confidence that it seems likely it might be time to let them know. Or that's a scenario where I'm a little bit more okay waiting until after close because people get spooked kind of no matter what. The opposite side, if we're talking professional services or more of it's a small cohesive team. You've had several team members who have been here from the beginning. They think of themselves as owners as well. Even if they're not, you've never had that conversation. They've never said it. They've been a part of that journey for so long that I've actually found to not only tell them, kind of upfront ahead of time, but if it's appropriate to have them be a part of kind of that diligence process and that negotiation. Usually the buyer on the other end really wants those people to stay. And so if there's this like artificial curtain of like, well, I can't
actually
talk
key
to
people
them.
like they're part, they've
and they feel like their partnership is still being respected even into that next chapter, that usually those folks are going to stay and stay happier a little bit longer. And it's interesting to do some of that deep dive too, that when I can speak openly with employees about it, you really get to the why of why they've been here. And sometimes that why is, it's good for my schedule, my compensation package is great, but some of that why is so much deeper than you could imagine. Like I was talking to somebody through this process who's like, well, my why of being here really is, call him Bob. That, Bob's a great boss. He, does the things that he says he's going to say. He's super flexible about my schedule. And as we're going through this conversation, she had shared with me that Bob had bought her like a fridge a number of years ago because her fridge went out and it just was not in her, wheelhouse to just go purchase another big appliance. And she had small kids at home. Of like, there is no comp package that a
loyalty.
new buyer is going to offer of like, he fed their families. Like what a language of love that is. And so, while I'm happy, for Bob and the relationships he's created, it's helping to set the buyer up of really understanding what that relationship is and, almost trying to risk mitigate of you can't just pay that person a stay bonus and have them stay. There is no monetary value to Bob, buying somebody a fridge and feeding her family. And so, how do we make a plan of if we can't match that offer, how are we going to make sure that this deal is still successful?
Gotcha. So your guys' space has gotten like super competitive, right? Like it just feels like I get called by people once a week or I get emails, all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. What are you guys doing to stay like different? You know what I mean? Besides, you've explained like the level of service, like, hey, we're not interested. Well, we would be interested, but it's like we're not looking for people who are trying to sell today. We're looking for people to try to sell in the next 5 years and planning and growing and helping them get to their end goal. Like how do you guys like stand out different? It just seems like such a competitive space,
Yeah. So, some of that is philosophy basis. Billy, my partner, would joke with you of like our unofficial tagline is that we give a shit. And like truly we do. That everyone on my team has been a former owner operator at some point. That like we know the language of business, we know how personal this is. And I can tell you that a lot of the folks in suits, like frankly, can't speak that language because they've never actually lived it. But I would say on the other side too of being, relationship focused, we're having the kinds of conversations that an investment banker does not have the time to have with you. We always make it a point to go on site. I'm shaking hands. I'm seeing people that just the transactional nature of this, landscape is that, you want to get on a Zoom call with me and I'll give you maybe 30 minutes while I'm looking at my other monitor because I'm doing, other work on the side. I'm not interested in the relationship. I'm just trying to win the transaction. Certainly not everybody's like that. But and I think too, just speaking to business owners, like the smart people that they are, I think when you start throwing out all these terms that they're not familiar with, that it's like it comes off as you're talking down to me. And like that is a terrible way to win business versus like, well, yeah, most people, unless you're in this world, you wouldn't have any idea what working capital means. That like, let me simply explain it to you, like from one human to another human. Yeah. That like the person who buys you wants to make sure that there's money in the business to operate after close.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. We don't have to speak at this, false high level.
How do you capture that at scale though? Like this is like the difference, right? It's like Mya and like the way that you speak to people and the culture and meeting them where they're at. Like, how do you scale that? Like, is that possible?
Yeah. I think some of that is you have to look at professional services scale differently than you would look at like HVAC or construction scale. That some of it is, frankly, taking a calculated loss of like, it's not work that I can do every and anywhere. That what is the level of depth that I can grow the relationship? What's the likelihood that I can be, kind of unconventional or maybe different in the business model itself? And I actually think one of our greatest strengths is that we do actually do more buy-side work than we do sell-side work. And that's not typical of most M&A firms. And some of that is that to be able to directly speak to, off-market sellers all day, every day. And like it really is a little bit of a game of telephone that they either meet our buyer's criteria or they could meet our buyer's criteria, but they're not ready. Well, there you go. That's consulting. Or they don't meet the criteria, but they are ready. Okay, well, we'll take you to market. Or it's neither. It's like, okay, well, let's work there together. And if nothing else, I'm happy to know another business owner in my area. So some of it is less of scale of people, more of scale of sending out the messages. We make hundreds of calls a day. And I'm a big proponent of actually picking up the phone and doing.
So you're picking up the phone and making the calls?
Yep. Yeah. Hello, this is Mya Stone from Stone Capital Partners. Do you have a couple minutes?
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I haven't cold called in a while, but it can work.
Yeah. Well, I think in a world of like, there's so many emails, there's so many LinkedIn messages, but to actually like hear somebody's voice on the other end. And we pitch it too of like, we're not, just trying to like throw our buyers in your face. It's like, well, I'm here to talk about your business. Or there's a number of calls that I might make, and I'll say something to the effect of, I've driven by your business every day for the last 5 years. I don't actually know what you do. Like, would you mind taking a couple of minutes and telling me a little bit about what your business does? And there's nothing that business owners love more than talking about their business.
Mhm.
And so it is literally baked into even our outbound to create that relationship, from the forefront. And I know that I don't do the kind of business that I can just like put on a poster somewhere and hand out flyers. That, things like this, be able to speak with you and try to get the message out there that something like this even exists is super advantageous to us too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't even know that it's a
Yeah.
category, right? Like your
Yeah.
average small business owners, like they're in the weeds, they're working, they're fucking just trying to make more widgets or whatever, and like they're not thinking about like, no, like what's your and like what are you building this for?
Right.
Like this isn't a job, dude. Like this is actually an asset and it's actually worth money. And if we can do these three things, it's gonna be worth a lot more money. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I don't think a lot of founders even think about their exit, honestly.
No, not at all. Well,
It's
and I
like they're
think
never gonna
that,
die or something. Like it's a weird
yeah, I
built-in
don't know.
thing.
I can empathize with like, it's so much work just to work some days that like, that's not even
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I have been really pointed about is being like a really intent, active listener to what the market is telling me. Because I think, you come up with an idea for what you think is going to be important that you want to do as a business. You go out and people are giving you feedback all the time. Sometimes that feedback is garbage and you shouldn't listen to it. But I think being really intent of when you do hear those common themes of like, well, yeah, I mean, if that's what other people are telling me, like, why would I not pivot? So if you look at maybe iterations before, one of the letters after my name is CEPA, Certified Exit Planning Advisor, which doesn't actually mean a whole lot. But when I got that, it was really touted to me of like the silver tsunami is coming. Like it's just a matter of time that there are definitely other folks out in the space that are saying similar things to me of like, we have to help these folks get ready to actually sell their businesses. It's not enough to just go sell them. Lots of people in the space saying that. But one of the things that I found and that the market told me is that if the majority of the silver tsunami is baby boomers, and we break down, some of the psychographics of baby boomers, and I'm sorry to our baby boomer listeners out there. I say this with love, that a lot of those folks don't do anything in their life super planned. They don't stop driving soon enough. Their estate is not put together soon enough. They don't go into assisted living soon enough. Why the hell would they plan their business exit soon enough? That like, why am I trying to sell something to somebody who has absolutely no sense of urgency? And that was what my prospect was, in kind of the first iteration of our business was, let me help you get ready. You'll exit eventually and we'll go from there. Now, the feedback that the market told me back is that that's not important to me today. I care about what's going to make me money right now. And if I have no sense of urgency, this was a nice conversation, but I'm not interested. And that's where leaning into buy side for us, I think, has been a huge advantage. That
Makes a lot of sense.
there is
Yeah.
now actually a sense of urgency of like, oh, somebody called me who knows buyers, talks to buyers every day, and says there might actually be a possibility that I could be sold. Okay, well, now I'm a little bit more interested. And if they are, close to that buy box for our client, that willingness to work with us is almost immediate. Of like, oh, well, you already have somebody. I'm nearly a perfect fit. Well, yeah, of course, I'll do a little bit to kind of get myself over the line. And then those folks who maybe they don't meet the buy box or they are further away. It was so intriguing to get a call of like, really, somebody might want to buy me? Like, tell me more. Like, I've never thought about this. And sometimes that conversation goes the way of like, well, I'm probably pretty far away, or it goes the way of like, oh, this feels kind of real to me now. And if I do want to do this, I need to do something about it now. So finding, that kind of call to urgency has been a big piece for us, especially with folks who, again, one of the downsides of professional services is like, I'm on the timeline of my client. It's when they're ready. But how do I help them decide that timeline a little bit more clearly?
It seems like in the last 10 years, the buying and selling of business thing has become like way more mainstream.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, is it a trend or is it like the market getting more savvy with being like, hey, starting a startup kind of sucks. Like I should just use capital to buy it, or like what is going on? Like what is
Yeah. I mean, a little
Or is it
bit.
just social media pumping it up? Like, it just seems like such a big thing, and it wasn't before.
Yeah. No, the ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition movement, is huge. Some of that I think is a little inflated, or you get kind of like the Instagram, TikTok gurus. Like, you don't do that, please.
If you see that guy who's like, you just need to 10x that shit. He was in the
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's
dude, you just 10x that shit, and
yeah,
then you 10x, and then now you
obviously.
got $100 billion, and like you're good.
Yeah, you go do that, please. It's kind of like that. I'm trying to think of the comedian that made the joke of like, talking to somebody about being a comedian of, well, if I was a comedian, I would just do something no one has ever done before, super bespoke like Seinfeld, and then I just like coast. I was like, yeah, you and everybody else, like, good luck with that. But no, to answer your question, yeah, there are a couple of camps here of, yes, there is real, movement to it. There's real capital, behind that there's, tons of ETA firms out there that will sponsor you as individuals. I think there's been a little bit of a slowdown. I definitely think low interest rates were super helpful for, the period that we have them. Capital is now a little bit more expensive. So the chance of you as, I'm just going to quit my job, I'm going to go get a loan, and I'm going to go buy a business is a much higher barrier to entry now than it was a few years ago. But so there's some real movement there. And I think too, going back to the silver tsunami, I think that's probably farther away than a lot of the people in the space believe it to be, or will tell you that it is, but it is coming. And you will have a population of sellers who never really prepared, and life just happened to them, whether they passed away, they got sick, their spouse got sick, that I think you're going to see a silver tsunami in the sense of not all these sellers coming to be sold, but all of these kind of distressed turnaround situations, and we're going to need people to go do them.
Yeah, I know somebody who just was a manufacturing company, and it was not long ago. She didn't even sell the business. She just like shut it down, sold the assets, sold the plant.
Yeah.
Like got her, I was like, I heard about it. I was like, it's weird. Like,
yeah. And like, I think that folks in that space don't know what their options
that's what I'm saying.
are.
Like, I'm like, what about the business? Like, that's
yeah. Well, and this goes back to like, you don't actually know what your business is worth.
right.
That, 9 out of 10 prospects that I talk to, if I ask, have you ever had a valuation done on the value of your business, would say no, but here's my revenue, and that this is how much work that I'm doing. But that's not, certainly that goes into having a valuation done, but that's not, the magic number, if you will.
So do you think the silver tsunami, do you think a lot of businesses are just going to close, or they're going to like just get destroyed on the sell side, like when they're not going to get what they're valued at or what they could have been valued at? Like, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of everything. I think of it of like, there's a lot of parallels of M&A in the real estate market of like, we do have an inventory shortage of obviously houses and real estate, but also an inventory shortage of businesses that, whether they are, total turnarounds or they're hidden gems, that when they do come online, there's capital here to buy them. That, with some of the ETA, it's nice to have a built-in platform of individuals who can pick up and, owned by individuals, rather than just like other institutional capital. I'm sure we'd save it for podcast number 2, but I could go on and on about, the pros and cons of institutional capital. But the reality is of like, if you like your favorite small business restaurant that you go to every Sunday, if that person doesn't make the exit that they should, that business won't be here anymore, because institutional capital is not going to come and pick up your local mom and pop, but your peers may. So keeping, local business local, that ETA movement is pretty pivotal to that.
Is there anything else you want to like dig into, or anything you guys got coming up that you want to talk about, promote, anything like that? Anything on the horizon? Or what does this look like long term, I guess? Like, what is, because I mean, you knew what you wanted to be when you were 3. So like, what do you want to be now?
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. So going back to my time at HBS, one of the things that you do on your first day is that you read a poem, and at the end of that poem, it says, well, what are you going to do with this one life that you have? And they asked the students to answer that. And my answer then was that I wanted to be a change maker, that my mindset then was that being a change maker meant, in terms of law, litigation, et cetera, that I thought I was going to go into. And change maker now means that taking kind of this, um, you know, tough environment, transactional environment, and showing people that it can be totally different. And I think too, you had mentioned earlier, as far as like, I probably don't look like what your typical investment banker or business broker looks like. And I have all kinds of thoughts on, being a woman in business. But I think more importantly of that, I would love to be the change maker in the sense of stripping away the artificial to get to the real of
fucking your competitors hate you.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they hate you, dude.
Yeah,
I love it. It's great.
And I kind of relish.
No, it's great. That's
a
awesome. Like, you're doing something right. Like, you're exposing their dirty secrets and like all the bullshit basically without saying it. And you're like, this is how you're actually supposed to do it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I think too of like, I'm just a get shit done kind of person.
Yep.
Even on the consulting side, I get really, grumpy when clients or prospects tell me of like, well, I worked with a consultant and they gave me a playbook and I never really did anything with it. It was like, well, yeah, of course, because you're running a business. Like, you don't need to run, some expensive playbook and your business. Like, I'm a partner here with you, and it's in our name of Stone Capital Partners. Of, I don't ever want to be across the table from you. I want to be shoulder to shoulder. Like, let's go through this together. So, I guess going back to that of like, what's the future look like? I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done here. I mean, I am one person in a very large pool, and I have a great team, behind me that, reflects the work really well as well. But it's hard to scale this. And so, wanting to get in front of as many folks as I can, not just to, hopefully win business and do something, better, but to also just spread the message of like that this even exists and that there is a pathway here. But in the long term, I think just the reality of any kind of consulting is that it is a little bit of a burnout game, whether you burn out a year from doing it or 20 years or whatever. I mean, you can only go through this for so long that in the long term, I do have kind of a small co-investment fund for kind of our engaged clients that in the long term, I'd like to build kind of a family office type structure of these long-term holds that I was passionate enough and believed in enough in a client or a business that I worked with to say that I want some of this too, whether it's a small minority stake or, owning 100% of it, that I think that's the long term for us. And it offers an exit path for my partners.
Yeah, it's great. You can just become the path. Like,
yeah.
I'll buy it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. It's kind of like your own ecosystem at that point. You mentioned you could make a lot of comments about being a woman in business. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, kind of an obvious trope that comes with that of, especially, in an industry that, finance itself is not heavy female led. And then also the clients that we work with, which, are usually construction, HVAC, essential services. There's not a lot of women in those either. Yeah. That it's pretty common that I don't see other people who look like me. And I think about a quote that a mentor gave me like a super long time ago of, if you can't fix it, feature it. And
I think it's huge.
Yeah. I will never not be a woman in business. And for now, I'm a young woman in business, but that the female part will never change for me. And so if I can't fix that, I'm going to feature it of like, I do just have, an ability to get into, conversations that I don't know that other people will. I mean, I know, back to our cold call of, frankly, my people are a little bit more willing to take my call because there just is that like, oh, well, some woman's calling me, like she probably, wants a nice conversation. Isn't just trying to like, I mean, I've gotten some nice, hang-ups.
Yeah, of course. Probably thousands of them.
Yeah. And like, people are so willing to tell you all kinds of things over the phone. But it is a little bit of that Trojan horse too of like, even when I am on site with a client and we're not going to tell the employees till after the transaction's done, there is not a single thought in anyone's head at that facility that I'm there to go sell their business, that I'm there for any other number of reasons. I get a lot of like, oh, that must be the HR consultant or the marketing consultant or the whatever, that like I can just go walk into somebody's office and have these conversations without anybody being any of the wiser. Or even walking, prospects through a like a site visit, walking them literally through the plant. I'm the one guiding it. Nobody thinks, oh my gosh, who are these weird guys in suits? It's like, oh, maybe that's the safety person or whatever. So if I can't fix that about myself, I'm going to make it, whatever I can to, benefit myself, because it's an advantage if you take advantage of it.
I think a lot of people would view it as, I had to get over that when we started because I looked 12, like I said, and like I was like, oh, but then I realized like, yo, dude, if you look 12 and you're doing this and you have like a legit company and people look you up, they'll be like, yo, this is one motivated fucking 12-year-old. Like he must actually be smart.
Yeah.
If he's got employees and people are following him. So I started like wearing it as like a badge of honor. And then I had like a bunch of like, not smart aleck, but like retorts to it. You know what I mean? That like I already had it in my head, but I think you're right on with like that. I think you have a good mindset about it. I think a lot of people are scared to do things because they're like, oh, I don't fit in. Oh, I'm going to look different. But like really, it's like such a competitive advantage. Like people don't like the same mundane suits and all that kind of shit. So yeah, rock on. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think one too of like, yeah, certainly I have conversations with folks that it's like, that was not like a kind way to treat me, or like it's very obvious that like they don't want to work with me because of, that. I think that's a very small percentage of people. And it's one of like, I work too hard to work with assholes of like, that's not an isolated incident, that you don't just not like working with women for the sake of being women and not be an asshole in your bigger life. That like, I probably don't want to work with them anyway. And they're going to be a nightmare to pass off even to my male colleague. Cause again, not isolated.
Totally. Well, awesome. Iowa. It's been great having you on. I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. Is there anything else that any cascading message or anything else you want to say before we wrap this up? No, Corey, appreciate your time. Thanks for the opportunity for having me. And, folks can find us at our website at stonecapital-partners.com, or always happy to connect on LinkedIn as well at Mya Stone. Cool. All right. See you, Mya. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.